Welcome to the sixth lecture of Management of Organization in Europe. Today we're going to discuss human resource management and labor relations. You can also find this in chapter 10 of the book Business Essentials. So, our learning objectives for today are to define human resource management, and we're going to discuss its strategic significance. I'm going to explain how managers plan for the organization human resource needs. I'm not going to discuss the legal context of human resource management and identify the contemporary legal issues. However, please read this in your book. I am going to continue by identifying the steps in staffing a company and discuss ways in which organizations recruit and select new employees. We're going to describe the main four components of compensation and benefits system. We're going to describe how managers develop the workforce in their organization through training and performance appraisal. Also, we discuss diversity, knowledge workers, the existence of a contingent workforce, and we're also going to explain where workers organize into labor unions and how the collective bargaining process will run. The order of topics is a bit mixed, but you will be able to find everything back. So we need to start with the definitions of HRM, a more common used abbreviation. So HRM stands for Human Resource Management, which is a set of organizational activities directed at attracting, developing, and maintaining an effective workforce. So it's not the same as recruitment. It's about attracting, developing, and maintaining the workforce. So this is important as employees are pretty much the key for quality and productivity. So the HRM adds value to a correct recruitment and hiring, so it's about getting the right people in the right position. So there's a process for that, the HRM process. This starts with job analysis. That is a systematic analysis of jobs within the organization, so that includes making job descriptions, writing down which kind of duties, responsibilities, conditions, materials, and other specifications are needed, as well as job specifications, which are more about listing the skills, the ability, and other qualifications needed to do the job. As organizations, internally, but also the external environment changes continuously, there's a need to have a forecast demand. This can be translated into replacement charge, so if someone leaves, who can replace them, or by employee information system. Those are systems which list what for every employee what their skills and attitudes are. Of course, knowledge is also a big part of that, but that's industry specific. As you understand, there might be gaps, so someone leaves, you do not have the person ready there. So that's why you need to start training or make sure that you can get external supply. There should also be, of course, different scenarios, a current state scenario, maybe a growth scenario, but in some circumstances you need to be able to cope with a shrink scenario. Let's have a look at the internal process first. So, in the HRM process, appraisal is quite important, and it's the evaluations of an employee's job performance, so you can determine to the degree in which they're actually performing effectively. Are they doing what they are supposed to do? There are two common methods. One is the objective method, so you're just going to look at the output, the numbers. Be careful, because this can of course be contaminated by opportunity bias. Example of this is that you understand it's easier to sell certain products in certain location. It's easier to sell beach umbrellas on a tropical island than on a, let's say, the country of Iceland. The book mentions it's easier to sell snow plows in a winter area. I mean, selling snow plows in Africa will not make you successful. However, that does not say that you as an employee are not doing your job perfectly. I'm just saying that there's opportunity bias which can influence, so that if you use this type of appraisal, it might not be the best method. So therefore there's another method which is called the judgmental method, which is more common and also compares performance directly with one and each other. Again, this can be quite difficult, as you know, no situation cannot be compared that easily. So a more recent technique for performance appraisal is a 360 feedback. This is also used a lot in management levels. So the manager is asked to also collect feedback from people on their own level, subordinates, and of course their own manager. So you are evaluated by everyone around you. That's why it's the 360, and it provides you much better feedback. So based on the appraisal, of course, the performance is discussed, but for the HR, it's also very important to have this information, as they can see if training programs are needed to make sure that in their HRM process and in their demand forecast, gaps are filled. So mostly in an appraisal or just after appraisal, a training program or development path is discussed, and this is to make sure that people move to the right position in the personal plan. You can have on-the-job coaching, which is more coaching to get you onboarded or better, or if you change to a similar job to make sure that you know the small differences. We also know off-the-job training, and with this type of off-the-job training, it's more technical training or a certificate. When we're looking at a simulation kind of experience, it's called the vestibule training. And in the vestibule training, the employee can focus on items like quality, safety, or other types of learning without having to focus on the productivity itself, as it is a simulated environment. So if you can't get the job fulfilled internally, you can always look at externally. So externally is when then we're talking about recruitment, recruiting, and it's attracting quality employees. And if we say external recruitment, we mean that we're looking outside of the borders of the organization. So it's aimed at finding the right person for the right job. And it's more difficult, as both the organization as the employee are not always presenting a clear or honest picture. However, if you do a realistic job preview, so you're more honest about the job, and you might have make sure that the people are also explaining their experiences better. There's a better person job fit, and it stays it's a more sustainable process, as the employees will last longer. What we often see is that the organization says it's very challenging job, a lot of variety, but in reality it's every day the same. The same is for candidates. They say they have experience, but they maybe only have done it once. So it's very important that you have a realistic job preview, and then still, as a firm, you want to start selecting. So of course you can select by screening. You screen the application forms or the resumes and the CVs, but you can also do tests. So a personality test to see if they fit the team, competence tests or IQ tests to see if they're up for the job, and then of course you do some interviews to verify that and make sure that everything you've seen on paper is real. There are also other techniques, of course. We used to see, especially in the US, sometimes polygraph tests. So that's the lie detector. This is less and less common. What we do see is that sometimes people are sent to some kind of vestibule training, so simulation. So they have to do role plays because the organization wants to see them in a stress type of situation. So once you have found the right person for the right job, it's time to start talking compensation and benefits. So there are 4 types in this category: wages, salaries, incentives, and benefits. So a wage is the compensation for time worked. So that is the agreement maybe some of you have at Albert Heijn. I know a lot of you work there. You're paid by the hour. So for every hour you get a certain amount of money. We also know salaries. Salaries is compensation for the job performed. So for your responsibility. So you're the sales manager, so you manage all sales, and therefore you get a monthly pay. And maybe you have discussed that it's 4 days of work or 5 days of work, but if there are seasonal patterns, you do not ask for overtime. We also know incentives. So incentives are special compensation to motivate high performances. So these are more individual, and they are like bonuses, profit sharing, etc. It really depends also for a region. Here in the Netherlands, Western Europe, we have quite high salaries and small incentives. If you would go to the US, the basic salaries or wages are low, but the incentive schemes are quite high. This is also based on culture and how you look at performance, and also what you think is the minimum you need to have a decent standard of living. Last category to discuss are the benefits. So the benefits is compensation other than wages, salaries. So they're more like retirement plans, healthcare cost, a company car, a phone. So this is actually a part of your wage or salary which is non-monetary. So if you get a phone, the good thing is you don't have to buy a private phone, so you save costs there, you don't pay taxes on it. So it's the entire package that you need to compare. And in some regions the benefits can be so high and the salary is low, so it might seem less attractive, but you need to look at the full set. Also depending, of course, on who you are and your personal preference are, you might think one thing is more attractive than the other. So now we have found the right person, we have agreed on compensation and benefits, so we start discussing some of the challenges we now see in hiring or recruiting people. So one of them is workforce diversity. So diversity is pretty much the range of attitudes, values, belief, behavior that differ by gender, age, ethnicity, physical ability. The knowledge workers are employees who are valued because of their knowledge, so the project oriented. And the temporary or contingent workers are employees who do not work full-time or on a permanent basis. So, workforce diversity. Questions to ask here are, of course, does the organization have to change, or do the people with different attitudes have to change? Probably it's both. If you join an organization, there's an organizational culture. The entire company is not going to change towards you. However, they still need to respect you in a way so that is good for everything. So this is changing currently quite a lot, the corporate cultures. Also, which is what is quite important, if there's equal employment opportunity. We're all different, but we can all do the same. So why should there be changes? These kind of topics, questions are quite recent, and up to 10, 20 years ago, it was quite normal that some people were paid less or more. And the changing behavior is sometimes a bit slow, so we can sometimes still see this, but I'm not sure if you have this in your organization, it's easy to attract the correct workforce. You need to adjust and make sure that you are in line with what people are expecting now. Knowledge workers. We've seen more and more that people are actually not producing but offering a service, especially Western Europe, Dutch market. We see that most people are highly educated and we are in the service and advice. So this is a totally new type of workers, and it's important for them to keep their knowledge up to date. So you need to invest a lot. Because if you cannot provide knowledge workers new knowledge, they will go to another company and you lose them. So we see that training programs are more and more important. Knowledge workers bring a lot of knowledge, but also expect to gain more. Then temporary workers or contingent workers. This requires careful planning because they're only temporary, so you need to have them on time and not too long because that's expensive. If you have them too late, that's inconvenient. But they have problems with commitment because they pursue their personal goals and not per se the organizational goals. And also with the rights and the long-term planning, they're changing all the time. So this is quite complex. Last item for today are labor unions. So labor unions is a group of working together to achieve shared job-related goals. So the union represents the workers. And the workers are good in working, but they're not always an expert in human resource management. They do not know the labor laws, etc. So they are represented by labor unions towards the organization, who of course know this. So every period there will be bargaining. That is the process by which labor and management negotiate employment conditions. So to continue with the collective bargaining, so this is a process in which the employment conditions like the wages, the salary, the benefits, also job securities, discussions about jobs going abroad to other countries are discussed. A lot of time this collective bargaining goes well, but there are situations where the labor representatives like the union and management, higher management, the organization, cannot agree. So there are tactics then which can be used. So the labor union has tactics like strike, pickets, boycotts, or work slowdowns or precision actions. We're going to do it exactly according to procedure, which slows things down. Management also has some of the tactics. It's lockouts or strike breakers, but they have much less tactics. It's also depending on the legislation in the country, what they can and can't do. But before you go to such strong measures and in the tactics, it might be better to call in a third party, see if you can find mediation or arbitration, because in the end, workers need the organization and organizations need the workers. You want to come and work for a long time. So now you know the highlights of human resource management with the process, the recruitment and all the steps. You know a bit about the use of labor unions and the bargaining process. We have come to an end of the series in management of organizations. I wish you well with your exam.